Alright guys, for the third section in 5.1, needing to go and make sure that you guys remember a couple things about when you're dividing. So as a something to compare this to, say I've got 4 over, how about 3 minus I, and I'm asking you to divide this. Remember, you're going to multiply by its conjugate, which would be 3 plus I, top and bottom. So that becomes 12 plus 4I over, it's a difference of square pattern, 9 minus I squared. I squared is -1, so it's 9 minus a -1, which turns into plus, so the bottom is 10. So you get 12 plus 4I over 10, and because it has an I, you have to split it. The idea is you're splitting this fraction into 2 separate pieces. That idea you're also going to use in this. Okay, plus 4I, sorry about the 4, over 10, so that becomes 6/5 plus 2I over 5. Okay, coming over to this, what's nice when they give you the right side is at least you know where to quit. Okay, whereas the ones in the previous section, sometimes you didn't know when to stop. So here, you're looking at sine over 1 minus cosine. You're going to use this idea of a conjugate. You're going to multiply by its conjugate, which would be 1 plus the cosine of theta. The top, I'm not going to multiply in right away. I'm going to hold on to that because I'm anticipating something to happen. And if you multiply it in, it's not that it's wrong. It's just then you're going to have to do additional work to get it out. So the bottom becomes 1 minus cosine squared theta. It's a difference of square pattern, just like we did the difference of square pattern here. And remembering your Pythagorean identities, sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared. So this bottom cashes in for sine squared. You have sine over sine squared. It's a product. When you have a product, you can cancel stuff. So that cancels out. And initially, you're left with 1 plus cosine theta over sine theta. Now, I'm going to draw your attention back over here. When you had this, the rule was because you had an I, you had to split it. Now, there's no I here, but I'm going to use this idea. I've got a sum on top, and I'm going to split it over a single fraction on the bottom. So that becomes 1 over sine theta plus cosine theta over sine theta, which becomes cosecant theta plus cotangent theta as required. Okay, so that would be your final answer. Remember, you can't touch the right side. The right side is the goal. You have to leave it alone. You can only alter, modify, work with the left side. Okay? So for this next one, it's begging you to add them together, but before I do, I'm going to write stuff all in terms of sines and cosines. When you have trig functions and the cofunctions, all in the same problem, that should raise a red flag for you. So that's where to work with. Yeah, it's begging you to add, but before you add, get stuff all in terms of sines and cosines. So that would be 1 over cosine plus sine of theta over 1 over sine theta. That's the main fraction bar here. You're dividing by this, so that's cosine theta is being divided by 1 over cosine theta. So that's cosine theta times cosine theta, or cosine squared. The same thing's going to happen here. You're going to multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay? So you get, so what this thing becomes, this right here becomes, is cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta. And your goal is to show that it's equal to 1. And if you remember your Pythagorean identities again, when you're adding, order doesn't matter, so this is worth 1. So 1 equals 1, and you're done. Okay. This one, it's begging you to add them together. Sorry, add them. Multiply them together. But before you do, I would cache everything in for sines and cosines. 1 over sine minus cosine over sine. That's this first one. It has a common denominator, so bring them together. 1 minus cosine theta over sine theta. That's the first one. Times the second one. 1 over cosine plus 1. Now, this, to me, is begging to have a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply by cosine over cosine. So the first one is 1 minus cosine theta, sine theta, times 1 over, I'll do it, 1 over cosine theta plus cosine theta over cosine theta. Okay? You can bring this one together. Sorry, this is looking kind of a mess here. So I got 1 minus cosine theta over sine theta times 1 plus cosine over cosine. No, you can't cancel. Okay, so don't try it. When you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. So the top you see is a difference of square pattern. So this becomes 1 minus cosine squared theta over sine cosine. And the Pythagorean identity again, sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. I got a 1 minus cosine squared, so sine squared equals 1 minus cosine squared. Alright, so the top is worth sine squared over sine cosine. This is going to reduce, so you've got sine over cosine, which is worth, which becomes tangent, which, if I'm not mistaken, that's what you wanted. Okay, I believe that's the last slide. Yep.